The top story that we're tracking comes all the way from election season, which is currently on, and it's on in full fervor. And every voter is thinking, what's in it for me? While the focus remains on women, farmers, poor, middle class has also emerged as most disenchanted this election. While the ruling party in its election manifesto has promised better cities, higher quality infrastructure, faster and better digital infrastructure, adding that the middle class will benefit a lot from these, there is no promise of tax savings, no money in the hands of poor. There is also the criticism of GST being very complex with limited rationalization of tax slabs. Congress, on the other hand, as one of the opposition parties, has also proposed an inheritance tax should it win elections. This could likely impact and hit middle class aspirations hard, as they will not be able to pass on the savings to their children. All parties in this election have failed to in fact impress the middle class, the ballooning class of people, one of the biggest vote bank party of this election season. The middle class should just or could just be the missing M factor in this elections. Now, recently a video has been circulating of an event at BSE in Mumbai, which has brought the focus back on taxation of the middle class. A stockbroker raised a question to the finance minister on the amount of taxes levied by the government on stock market transactions as well as buying a house. They called the government a sleeping partner that hoards money through tax while the common man breaks their back. Listen in.
As a broker, when we are putting a trade for retail investor, we are attracting number of taxes: CGST, IGST, stamp duty, STT, long-term capital gain tax. So today, government of India is earning more than the broker. We have government, I am investing everything, I am taking a whole lot of risk, and government of India is taking away entire profit of mine. You are my sleeping partner. I am a working partner with my finance, my risk, my staff, everything. So what do you want to say on this? Number two, there is one more question for you. You have removed cash component, Mr. Lodha is also there, from buying a house. In Bombay, today, if anybody wants to buy a house, is a nightmare. Because I am paying tax, I have white money. Now we have to pay everything by check. Mr. Lodha will not accept cash. So, my bank balance is purely after paying all taxes to government of India. Again, when I am buying a house, I have to pay stamp duty, I have to pay GST, so that amounts to 11%. In a city of Bombay, when I'm buying a house, 11% goes out of my pocket towards purchase of house. So how you will assist a small person with limited resources to buy a house, and how a broker can function with hordes of taxes, where government of India is my sleeping partner and I am a working partner with no income.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we have last two questions.
Sorry, I told Shaina I have no answer for that, but a sleeping partner cannot answer sitting here.
That question does look like it stumped the finance minister, but it did raise a lot of questions on whether the government is sleeping. Does it really know of what the middle class is undergoing, their sufferings with respect to taxation? Let's discuss all of that. Gauri, Chadda, Tax and Wealth Management Advisor, joining us on the show. With me in the studios are my colleague Rakesh, Khar, Kartik, Malhotra. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Gauri, thank you very much for taking time out. I'll come to you first. Your first reaction to that video. It actually emulates what a lot of people in this country have been feeling for a very long time, and that is middle class people continue to be the breadwinners, continue to be active workers, and it's on their back that the economy is actually working.
Definitely. See, if we take both the the investor in stock market and investor in real estate separately, so if we talk about the investor in stock market, of course they are paying, and even traders for that matter, in fact traders are paying more taxes because they are trading on a daily basis. So definitely they are paying STT brokerage, GST, everything, and even the brokers are paying a lot of money to the government. And irrespective of that, the trader or investor is incurring losses or profit, they have to pay taxes to the government. When it comes to the real estate market, I understand, and I'll be the last person to, encourage black money in the real estate market. But the fact is that even after removing the black money from the real estate market, I think it is not helping in any way, because the price of real estate is now even more, inflated. Basically, the burden on the person who is paying for that real estate is higher than before. I'll explain you with a very small example. So, if suppose the property was for 1 CR earlier, and a person was paying 50% in black, 50% in white. So, the 50% amount which was being paid in white was actually what he earned was 71%, and after taxes he got 50%, and that remaining 50% was exactly 100%, as in there was no tax paid on that. So the total cost was 121 plus GST in case of construction, under construction property, and of course stamp duty and all. But where the person is paying 100% in white, that 100% is fully tax paid money. So in order to earn that 100, that 1 CR, the person has to earn 142, so that they can invest 100 in real estate.
All right.
Plus, of course, the stamp duty is on that 100, and of course the GST is on that 100. So the total burden on the person who's paying in all white is definitely higher. And of course, no investor will be encouraged to buy that property. So definitely, black money should be removed, but in such a way that the investor is also getting the benefit.
Absolutely. No question on black money. But, Rakesh, I want to come to you first. This conversation has opened a Pandora's box, and that is, it does feel like whichever government, whichever party promises that we'll do best for middle class, despite all the promises of economic prosperity, it's the middle class that continues to suffer as far as taxation is concerned. The larger debate is, of course, government needs the money to run the country, but should it be at the expense of middle class and middle class alone?
Well, of course, first and foremost, we get caught in binaries. As someone who is watching the economy for the last 3 decades, I would say that someone has to, pay that money. The government needs to earn revenues. What is the source of revenue? It is essentially direct and indirect taxes. So, middle class, tax deducted at source is the easiest way to do it. But the larger debate is politically, does it matter to any big political party to see middle class as a vote bank? It does not see middle class as a vote bank that it can guarantee itself on. I am using the word guarantee by design because everybody is talking about guarantees these days. There are many reasons for that. The best of the middle class heroes politically in this country is Narasimha Rao, along with Manmohan Singh. He brought about economic reforms which changed the economic landscape from the consumption perspective. So, he again was invested in the poor. And the fact of the matter is that, forget about that we largely fall in lower middle class or upper middle class, the way you want to look at it. Essentially, India is a poor country, and there are limited ways that government can raise funds, and there are unlimited ways that it has to spend that money. So, the argument that each political party makes in say in states and in the center, that the middle class for us is important by the way of giving facilities to them. My worry is that it's not that government hasn't done enough in terms of improving the landscape or the economic landscape, whether it's better airports, whether better roads, better highways, and better way of quality of life. But your wallet is obviously getting burdened day by day. On real estate, of course, we are not at all for black money. That's a big plus. There's also a transaction tax, which our friend forgot to ask the finance minister, which comes into play once you have a property worth 50 lakh and above, which is generally the case in big metros. So, there is a transaction tax which is again levied, which is one more tax. Political class sees middle class as someone who is indifferent to the politicians. That's where the tragedy is. And
is that also the tragedy that is perhaps playing out this election season? I mean, we do want to
not just this election, the voting percentages in big metros continues to be a challenge.
Absolutely.
And barring 2014, when there was this huge Modi wave where middle class, so to say, swept itself with it. But that level of indifference is coming back into the frame.
Okay. So you see that indifference in the voter turnout this election season, Kartik. You know, very interesting point that the middle class does not really fall in any of those desired buckets for either the ruling government or the opposition that is hoping to come to power. It is indifferent. It falls through all these brackets. It could be women, it could be very poor people, but that could just be the reason why middle class is feeling disenchanted. What is in it for us? Why should we vote you? You're not telling us that you're going to take less money from us. We continue to be the tax burdener. We know you. We continue to take the burden of tax-paying citizens, and yet there is very little that is coming to our rescue.
No debate about that. And just to borrow a phrase that, Rakesh had used many months ago, the middle class has always been a political orphan. And unfortunately, we don't have Maibap, we don't have any political party which is out there fending for us. We have to fend for ourselves, and we end up paying the government taxes which are absolutely obnoxious. We are not the only country. In fact, every country pays taxes. Citizens in every country pay taxes. And in countries like the US, for example, tax rates are much higher than they are in India. So as countries become more developed, there is more tax outgo. But the problem really is that India also has far more number of poor people who do not fall in the bracket of minimum tax, and hence the smaller chunk of the population, which is the middle class, ends up subsidizing them. Now, the problem in all of this really also is that the government knows very well that middle class cannot be the vote bank simply because in urban areas which house the middle class in maximum numbers, most of the people actually don't belong to that city. Look at the three of us sitting here, for example. You come from Dehradun, Rakesh comes from Kashmir. I happen to be from Delhi NCR. It becomes difficult for us to go back to our home states and vote in any case, right? So, getting middle class to go out and vote is a challenge for governments, number one. So, in election season, why should the government lay out any additional SOPs for them, seems to be the thinking. So, this is one part of the story. The second part of the story is that while you look at the composition of India's economy, right, and you look at the composition of taxes which the government has collected. Let's talk about the taxes first and the economy later. The middle class in India, or rather tax-paying citizens, middle class, upper, lower, whatever, the split may be, has paid about 12 lakh crore rupees in taxes. How much has the government collected as direct taxes from corporations, from business houses? 9 lakh crore rupees. The delta between what individuals pay as tax and what companies pay as tax is moving against the middle class and only increasing on the middle class side. Now, if you look at the overall, composition of the Indian economy, for every 1 rupee which the government of India earns, almost 15% of that comes from these taxes which we pay. What do we get in return? I mean, we can argue, hey, government is building infrastructure for us, but government is actually building infrastructure to connect rural areas with urban areas to improve the quality of life for rural areas. The folks living in the rural areas will want to come to urban cities to migrate and get milked more on taxes. The reverse migration doesn't happen. You don't, barring very few instances, you don't have people going back to their hometowns and living and or making and earning there. Then there is one large constituency called the agriculture sector.
That's right.
Why is the agriculture sector, even in the year 2024, not paying any taxes?
So those are some very valid questions.
Actually, it's very important to recall that both finance minister, this government and the earlier government UP, Pranab Mukherjee brought in the stimulus, the fiscal stimulus for the corporates, and this government cut down corporate taxes. When you look at it in context of the middle class, these would definitely seem needless.
Absolutely.
And disadvantage to the middle class. And agriculture, he rightly pointed out, is absolutely political untouchable, because that's a vote bank.
Absolutely. And I think let's get in Gauri back into this conversation. Gauri, a lot of these valid points as far as taxation is concerned. One, of course, is that the delta between what corporates is paying and what middle class, us, the people, are paying is very large. Essentially, the burden of running this country falls on our shoulder. Is this about time now that we are in 2024 for government to relook perhaps at how it taxes the corporates vis-a-vis how it taxes working class? And of course, the big question on when will the agriculture income be finally taxable?
See, definitely, I agree on both the points. First is like agricultural income. Definitely, I agree that there are farmers who are not earning that much. They should be exempted. But there are farmers who are earning a lot of money, be it via renting out their agricultural land or selling agricultural produce. They are not paying any tax, and of course that should be taxed. Second is the difference between the corporate tax and the individual tax rate. So if you see, I believe that if a person is into job, they are getting salary. Of course, they can't claim anything apart from the few deductions which were there in old regime, and now mostly people are switching to new regime. So definitely they are actually not getting any benefit of any deduction as such. And if you see the tax rate of private limited companies, it has been reduced a lot. Moreover, these companies and people who are running LLP proprietorships or partnership firms, they can claim all the expenses which they incur in order to run their business. So in short, if you see that the companies, private limited companies, public limited companies, LLPs, partnership firms and proprietorships who are making their say balance sheet, or maybe even filing return under presumptive section, I think that is the most misused section in the income tax act. They are hardly paying any taxes, whereas I feel they should be paying more taxes, because there are few expenses which should not be claimed as business expense. Moreover, if businesses are allowed these expenses, I think the people who are getting salary also should get some benefit in terms of either expenses or even lower tax rates. So definitely that difference which is there between a person who is getting a salary and a person who is running a business, especially a corporate house, I think that difference should be taken care of. And in this scenario where the corporate tax rate is so less, maybe in future it might be reduced further
All
also.
right.
But in this scenario, it is a situation where we can say that if a person wants to start a business, then he or she should go for a private limited company, because the tax rate is lowest in private limited company.
All right.
And
So
if you
that
want to
that of
actually
course
run,
is a huge problem here. We don't want corporates to feel they're not welcome.
Absolutely.
Right.
No, I was coming to
this
a
is going to
possible
be a very
solution.
narrow path to.
It's a difficult path.
Absolutely.
It's a delicate balance. The way forward to my mind is, we have to bring agriculture in the larger, tax net. Second is that constantly, we are going back and forth on the capitalist versus socialist paradigm politically. That we have to have a consensus that wealth creators are welcome. We need more and more wealth creators. We need more wealth to go into the system for the government from wealth creators and not just salaried people. So for that to happen, there has to be clear, political line. It's election time and there is a lot of confusion. Though yesterday the Prime Minister repeated that, unless and until we have more and more wealth creators in the system, the Indian economy will not be able to sustain its growth rate. We have to, so to say, duck any potential criticism about, one or two, big ticket industrialists being favored. Unless and until you open up the economy to big ticket capital, then only there's going to be big ticket investment that will lead to big ticket jobs, and which in turn will lead to corporate tax kitty going up. It will not go on the existing base, which is already low. And
the conversation so much is not about big ticket investors being targeted, but whether they've been unduly favored in this election season. I mean, couple of them are names that have been doing the rounds, which Prime Minister also mentioned.
What happens is the whole canvas gets into confusion about, there is a lot of trepidation in the corporate sector about, suppose there is a surprise element in the election results. What do we do with corporates?
Absolutely.
So I'm talking about all fairness, all equity, but moving to a very level playing field.
One of the jibe that this government has continuously faced, Kartik, is that this is the government of Sood Boot Ki Sarkar. It has favored HNIs, it has favored wealth creators, as we call them. The middle class looks at it as corporate leaders, people who have exorbitant amount of money and they don't know what to do about it, and they're not taxed as appropriately as they should be. Where do we draw the line?
See, I'll tell you, it is going to be difficult for the government to actually increase the corporate tax rate. I agree with Gauri, we need to include far more LLPs and proprietorships and sole proprietors into discouraging them using taxation mechanisms, discouraging them from taking refunds on taxes and claiming expenses to make their income tax free. That is definitely going to widen the tax base. But for the corporate tax rate to go up, the fear always is of flight of capital. You don't want to increase the tax rate from 25%, let's say back to 30%, or make the super rich tax back to the 42% levels that they once were, because that is going to prompt prompt a lot of job creation and capital to get out of the country. But for the middle class, and coming back to that missing M factor, the problem is, I'll give you an example. Somebody earning, let's say, 1 lakh rupees a month, 12 lakh rupees per annum. I've run some, back of the envelope calculation, ends up paying about 1,70,000 rupees as direct income tax, all inclusive, right? So that is 1,70,000, 17%, or much more than that actually, out of that 12 lakh rupee corpus going out directly to the government. The balance left for the person to spend after paying those taxes is give or take about 10 lakh rupees per annum. In this 10 lakh rupees, given inflation and given the cost of living in metro cities, urban cities, in any case going up and not down, unlike China, the problem is if you average out the GST on anything that this family consumes, which is after tax keeping 10 lakh rupees at about 18%, because it goes as high as 28%, comes down as low as 5%. If you average it out to about 18%, that is another 1,80,000 rupees gone. So you are net talking about 1,80,000 rupees plus 1,70,000 rupees, which is 3,50,000 rupees out of 12 lakh rupees which you earn going as taxes. And this, to my mind, is obviously a big problem, because you either take direct taxes from me and let me live my life without paying the indirect taxes, or you don't tax me at source, let me get all the income I'm getting, and you rationalize the indirect taxes to a point that overall my tax outgo to the government of India, which is going to use that money not only to build highways but also to win elections and also to appease a minority section of the population or the poor section of the population on the behest of the money I pay him, get rationalized at some point.
All right, very revolutionary a thought. We don't know if it's implementable, at least in the short run. But gentlemen, we have run out of time. Thank you very much, Gauri, Chadda. Thank you very much, ma'am, for joining us.